What's up, guys? Nino here, and welcome back to another episode of Noteworthy Interactions. Today I'm going to be playing a Scion Power Siphon of the Archmage build. It's a Ballista build, totem build, so I'm going to do a quick map here. It's a Drox map, and show you what it looks like. All right, so there you go. That's a quick map and showcase of the build. As you can see, the clear is excellent. It's very zoomy. I have quite a lot of move speed. You get a lot of attack speed, so your shield charges are very quick. Um, and yeah, so basically we are doing Power Siphon of the Archmage, which got a really nice buff this league. So one of the things that got buffed is it now has the line increases and reductions to spell damage also apply to attack damage from this skill at 150% of their value. So it's going to scale off of spell damage. And then in addition to that, it deals added lightning damage equal to 28% of maximum mana. And as you can see, I have 7,000 max mana. We are a mind over matter build here. And, we're stacking up a bunch of mana and intelligence and not very much life, only 2.7k life, but we don't really need it because our mana pool counts as basically takes damage for us instead of life. So 40% mind over matter from here, and then I'm a Scion, and I have the Hierophant node, which gives another 8% of damage taken from mana before life. This is also giving us +1 max totem, and some extra max mana. So in total, we have 6 totems. So it's 3 from our Ballista totem support. So yeah, well, one by default, +2 from Ballista totem support, plus another one from Hierophant. And then we are using Wilma's Requital, which is giving us Ancestral Bond, so that's 5. And then we have Anointed Surveillance on our amulet, which is another +1. So that's 6 total using this amulet. I got really lucky and I found an amulet that has both Ironwood and Surveillance on it. These double Anointed amulets are now dropping from some Blight content this league, and that's kind of a new thing. And one of the biggest issues with this build is definitely the survivability of the totems when it gets like really crazy. So having Ironwood is just really nice to help keep your totems alive. But as you saw, I was actually clearing with Fury Valve. Actually, this is the wrong Fury Valve. The other one I have is supposed to have Anointed Surveillance on it, but anyway, it's the same, more or less the same. But the nice thing about Fury Valve is it says skills fire 2 additional projectiles, but modifiers to number of projectiles instead apply to the number of targets projectiles split towards. And the interesting interaction with Power Siphon by default is going to split, or it's going to fire projectiles at up to 8 targets. And it's always going to fire those projectiles even with Fury Valve. So you're always shooting at 8 targets. Like, even though Fury Valve says modifiers to number of projectiles instead apply to number of projectiles split towards, like, you're still getting the 8 minimum targets, and then each of those is going to split towards 2 additional targets from Fury Valve, and then any other additional projectiles you have are going to add to the number of splits. So because I'm a Deadeye here, I get 1 free projectile from that. You can also get another one from the Wand Mastery. Wand attacks fire an additional projectile. I ended up swapping off of that because I wanted some leech for my totems because I wanted them to stay alive a little bit better. So the attack damage leech this life comes into play there. And obviously the clear is really good even without that 1 extra projectile. You don't really need it. So yeah, the other thing we're doing here, I am a gladiator, and we take this mainly for the gain 50% chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value. And I'm using the new Svalinn shield, and this thing is insanely good. It doesn't look like it at first glance, but then you read the line, chance to block is lucky, and that basically means your max block is like 88%. So it has -10 max chance to block attack damage and spell damage, which makes your actual max 65. So as you can see here, chance to block attack damage 65, chance to block spell damage 63, right? And when you have lucky block, what that means is it's rolling this chance twice. So 65% chance and then another 65% chance. And what that ends up equating to is roughly an 88% block chance. And it's actually quite easy to cap block and spell block on this character. Number one, because Gladiator just gives you 50% block just right off the bat. Because Svalinn itself only has 23% chance to block on it, so it's actually quite a low base block chance. So having Gladiator just gets literally giving you 27% block chance. So already that's really nice. Then we come down here and we grab Command of Steel. That's another 8%. And we have these 3 nodes tattooed, so that's another 3%. And that is pretty much it for regular block chance. Like, that's kind of all we need. And that caps us at 65. And then you can also take these block nodes here. But in my case, I ended up dropping those because I didn't actually need them. And then to cap spell block, what I'm doing is using a blue Nightmare Jewel right here. And this thing gives passives granting lightning resistance or all res in the radius are also going to grant spell block at 50% of the value. And we just have all of these anointed with lightning res. So they all give 6% lightning res, 3% spell block from all of these int nodes, these small travel nodes. We just tattoo them. And so, you know, if you look at my actual block chance, so 63 with the jewel, take that out, we're only at 37. So that's how much block chance we're getting just from that one jewel, right? The other 37%, so 15% on the shield itself, and then the rest just from this wheel right here. And that's it. That's all you need. You don't need to run Tempest Shield. You don't need to do, you know, anything else really to get that block chance. So that's really, really nice. And this shield just feels so amazing to use. Like, it feels like you never get hit. It is definitely one of the best defenses I've ever used in any build. It's so good if you can cap block with it. And because this build can do it with like pretty minimal investment in block, it's very, very worth using. The other really cool thing this does is it allows you to trigger a socketed elemental spell on block. There's quite a lot of cool things you can do with that. It's not just, you know, like, I think at first glance you kind of think like, oh, you could trigger like Molten Shell or something, right? Like, or Frost Shield or whatever. Like, you can do way more with it than that. So currently what I'm doing is using Purifying Flame, and that is going to give me Consecrated Ground every time I block a hit. And basically Consecrated Ground just gives you a bunch of extra regen. So that's just kind of like, you know, some nice recovery on block. We're also doing Cold Snap. Cold Snap is going to chill. It's going to create chilled ground. So it's going to slow everything around us. And then that chill, it gives, as you can see, 23% more effective chill on there. So it's a pretty decent chill, even though we're not actually like doing any damage with it, because I'm using Wilma's Recoil, so like I can't do any damage myself because Ancestral Bond prevents it. You can only your totems or your traps or mines or whatever can do damage. But this is still going to chill everything. And then also enemies that die within the radius of the chill are also going to grant frenzy charges, even if they're killed by your totems. So it's a nice way to just maintain frenzy charges while mapping. And then lastly, just have power charge on crit here. So yeah, while mapping, this is just giving us frenzy and power charges with pretty good uptime. Plus the chill, plus the extra regen. So like, that's just one thing you can do with this. There's so many other cool things you could do. Like, you could, you know, in addition to triggering guard skills like Arcane Cloak or Molten Shell, you could do things like, you know, trigger Flame Wall. If you're doing a projectile build, you want to shoot projectiles through the Flame Wall in order to get the added damage. You could do stuff like that. You could do, there's a bunch, oh man, I had a whole list of things, but there's a bunch of other things you can do with it. If you just go through like the list of all elemental spells, you'll find some cool, interesting things you can actually trigger with it. So the other cool thing, so like, as you can see, I have power charge on crit here, and that's only really going to be effective if I have enough crit chance on my spells here. And the way we're getting crit chance on this build is by using the Light of Meaning Jewel. And this is giving us 5% increased global critical strike from each of the passives in this radius. So like, all of these are giving extra crit chance. Except you notice some of these are giving 10% crit chance, not 5, right? Like these ones down here are 5. These ones here in the overlapping of these of all three of these jewels are all giving 10% crit chance. That's because we're using Might of the Meek jewels in both of these slots, and that's going to increase the effect of all of these small all these small nodes by 100% with both of these. So we're doubling the effect of these mana nodes. We're doubling the crit chance that gets added from Light of Meaning. We're doubling the movement speed here. We're doubling the attack speed, the accuracy, stuff like that. Like, if you wanted to, you could do a build that just goes super hard on all of these stats in this center area and just gets like really good value out of all of it. That was actually kind of the original idea behind this build, is like I wanted to figure out a way to take advantage of the cast speed and the attack speed and the spell damage and all the everything here, right? And that's kind of where the idea for Wilma's came from, because this gives increases and reductions to cast speed applied to attack speed. I ended up dropping these nodes because I ended up just like wanting to pick up a cluster jewel up here, and a couple other things that I wanted to pick up, and so I didn't really need these nodes, but the idea is still there and it still works. So like this cast speed is actually giving attack speed with Wilma's, and then this spell damage is actually giving 150% of the spell damage is applying to Power Siphon, because of that line that spell damage applies at 150% of the value. And yeah, it's super strong. Like these are each giving 24% spell damage essentially, or like 24% increased damage. And yeah, you get a ton of extra mana. Again, we're mana stacking. You get all this move speed, some attack speed, some projectile damage. Like you can take all these projectile nodes here. Each of these is giving a ton of res, which I ended up swapping from the projectile stuff to the res stuff just because I was having trouble with some of my gearing capping out the res there. But yeah, like ideally you would just like pick up all of these small nodes in this area and you get just tons and tons of value out of it. But even just with this, like if you want to look at my crit chance here, so main hand crit chance 74%. When I drop totems, that's going to go up to 85%, and then when I have power charges, it's 100%, right? But if I take this out, we go down to 40%, right? So like this jewel alone is giving us like at least 35% crit chance, more, actually more though, when my other buffs are up, right? So yeah, it's pretty massive. And the other thing that got buffed for this skill is just wand base types got a huge buff in terms of their crit chance. So this is my current wand. As you can see, base crit chance is 13.4%, which is like fucking gigantic. So yeah, this prophecy wand has a base crit chance, like before any modifiers, of 10% now, which is huge. Other wand types got buffed as well, not just the prophecy wand. Like they're all really good now. And then we just have a bunch of flat mana on there. We have attacks with this weapon penetrate, and then crit chance, crit multi, attack speed, and then again we have the spell damage implicit, and then spell damage from the rune crafting. And again, that's just going to be extra value because of the 150% effective spell damage on Power Siphon. So you don't really need any flat damage on here. I did hit the flat lightning damage to spells. That does nothing. That's just a dead mod for this build, so you can ignore that. Yeah, you don't really need any flat damage on the wand itself. You just want mana, crit chance, attack speed, penetration, all that kind of stuff. So the other gear, I'm using some ward gloves, and actually the shield itself has ward on it, up to 180%, or not percent, 180 flat ward, roughly. And the really cool thing about that, these nodes, 50% increased defenses from equipped shield, like all three, that's 150% increased defenses. That's actually going to apply to the ward that the shield grants. So as you can see, I have a 586 ward, which is a really, really nice defense when it comes to using a shield like this that has such high block chance. Because like when the 12% of the hits that do actually get through, they're just going to hit your ward, and your ward is going to be up almost all the time now because ward also got buffed this patch, and it now recharges after only 2 seconds instead of 4, I believe it was before. So it's way more consistent now, and unlike energy shield, ward does not get the recharge does not get delayed when you take damage. So you can be degenning, you can be taking hits or whatever, and your ward is still going to come back after 2 seconds. And like if you get another piece of ward gear that has faster recharge of ward rate or whatever, like that can go down to easily 1 second or below, with fairly minimal investment into ward stuff. So ward, I think, is actually in a pretty good spot defensively right now, and I think people are kind of like sleeping on it a little bit. And there's some other new ward items like that ward belt that gives you extra ward based on the defenses of your body armor, that I think are really cool, and I might try to build around that soon. So that's another thing to watch out for. So, but yeah, the gloves are basically just, I ended up hitting mana. I was essencing mana on there, and then I ended up hitting tier 1 life. I was going to be happy with either life or max ward, and I hit the life, so I just kept that. But ward is it effectively quite similar to life for this build, in terms of defenses, because I have like only a couple increased life nodes, like these two and these two. I think that's the only increased life I have on the tree, which is why my life total is so low. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we're like 2.7 with this amulet on. So yeah, having flat life is pretty similar to having flat ward. The only thing is life, I guess, is a little better at dealing with degens because ward doesn't help against degens, but still life is pretty good. So yeah, and then just some attack speed, some res, and pierce on there. The implicits aren't perfect. They could probably be changed, honestly. You don't really need flat lightning to attacks because you get so much flat lightning from just having mana, just having a big mana pool. So there's probably a better implicit I could get on these. And like, obviously the lightning damage leech doesn't apply to me. It only applies to my totems, but it does keep the totems alive. So it is not a bad thing to have, but I do have some leech on the wand mastery anyways. So probably don't need it there either. As far as the belt goes, I'm using Darkness Enthroned with as close to 100% increased effect as possible. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but the idea here is to use 2 jewels that have flat mana and chance to avoid being shocked, enough that with the increased effect of the jewels and the 2 jewels combined, you have over 100% chance to avoid being shocked. And then we use the Storm Shroud Jewel to just make that apply to all elemental ailments. So we're ailment immune, which is really nice. And yeah, I mean, just some other life mana, some strength, some flat lightning to attacks, that kind of thing. You can get some accuracy. Yeah, this is the other jewel I was using for a while. You can get flat lightning out into wands, res. So yeah, you can find some pretty cool jewels here. And then they basically just get doubled in effect. It's a good way to get mana on your belt because otherwise it's kind of hard to get high values of mana from the belt slot. And then we're also using Dance of the Offered, and these are going to give us onslaught while not on low mana, and then also the Agnostic, which is going to delete our energy shield, so that's why I'm at 0 out of 0, but it's going to give us some really nice recovery. It's gonna drain our mana but recover our life. So that's kind of how we deal with degens on this build. So for hits we have like Giga Block, and then for degens we have the Agnostic, and it works quite well, honestly, most of the time. Character's level 94. I haven't really struggled too much with dying on this character, and yeah, it's been feeling pretty good overall. The other stuff we have, rings, pretty straightforward, just life, mana, res, increased elemental damage with attacks, stuff like that. I got a decent mirrored ring with some, life mana, int, all that stuff. And the amulet, again, life mana, flat lightning, some stats, and then like those anoint, the double anoint is really, really nice. But obviously it's kind of rare to be able to find those two exact anoints. But yeah, like there's actually very few ways to make your totems tankier. It's pretty much just this wheel here, and then this wheel up here, and then I am using Ancestral Preservation to get some extra res for my totems, just because I can't really path all the way over here just to pick up, pick up these or pick up these. It's just too much travel when everything else I want is kind of this area of the tree. So yeah, it's kind of really nice that I was able to get Ironwood as an extra anoint without having to lose an extra totem anoint as well. And then, yeah, I ended up going for the Cluster Jewel here just because Ancestral Preservation is just really nice for keeping those totems alive. I also have Snaring Spirits on here, which is just going to give us some extra damage and then slow everything near our totems, which is kind of nice as well. And that kind of stacks up with the Chill from Cold Snap, too. So that's pretty good. Yeah, other stuff we got going on is just Arcane Cloak with automation, Detonate Mines, and Arcane Surge. The reason we're using Detonate Mines is because we have Wave of Conviction with Charged Mines and High Impact Mine. Again, you can't deal damage yourself with Ancestral Bonds, so you have to use Mines in order to proc Wave of Conviction, the exposure from that. But Charged Mines is also good for maintaining charges against bosses, because these are kind of more these are better at keeping charges up like when you're mapping, so having Charged Mines there for bossing is kind of nice as well. And then we have Eternal Blessing and Haste, and because Haste gives cast speed and attack speed, and because we're using Wilma's, we benefit from both of those. And it's two separate lines, right? So it's not like attack and cast speed as a single line. It's you and nearby allies gain increased cast speed, and you and nearby allies gain increased attack speed. So it applies both times essentially for this build. So haste is really high value here. It's our only aura because we're running it on Eternal Blessing. We're using Sniper's Mark. We don't need Assassin's Mark or anything to cap crit, just because we have so much crit from the wand itself. So that's pretty nice. Frostblank just for movement, and then shield charge and stuff, faster attacks. Rage support, it kind of sometimes gives you a little bit of rage when you're just like mapping and just shield charging and stuff, but yeah, it's not really very reliable in terms of rage generation. Unfortunately, there's not a great way for this build to generate rage for our totems. In theory, that would be really, really strong, because rage is just like a big more multiplier. I think if you really wanted to do it, you'd have to like come down here and grab like the Warcry minimum power stuff, and then like the Warcry grants rage per power from those two, but like it's too much travel, and it didn't, I wasn't really able to fit it into this build, so I didn't end up going for that. But build's still pretty strong regardless. As you saw, like the damage is pretty solid. I don't really know exactly what the damage is currently. I haven't POB'd it or anything like that. But it's definitely been feeling good. It feels like at least 5 to 10 mil, somewhere in that range. But I'd have to like actually POB it out to know the exact numbers. And then yeah, the other stuff we've got going on, we do have Iron Will just for some extra spell damage, which again applies to our attack, and some recoup mana. We got some charge, flask charge generation from these two, so we never really run out of mana flask, which unfortunately is kind of the only way to really sustain the mana cost of Arcane Cloak, because it does, as you can see, my mana pool just keeps getting kind of deleted, and we have some mana regeneration, but it's not enough to like fully regen between Arcane Cloaks, so you kind of do have to just spam that mana flask. And mana is our life pool, so we do kind of want to keep that topped off. We have the Totem Mastery, which is just giving us crit chance when we summon a totem. Um, at some point, you can probably drop that and just swap to like 5% damage from hits is taken from totem. Um, Taunt totems, like for this build, doesn't really seem necessary or worth it. Uh, Mainly because you kind of don't want your totems getting hit because they die so easily. But yeah, you have enough block to like take hits pretty well. So yeah, I haven't really felt the need for that taunt totem thing. But yeah, having just some extra crit chance here is really nice. We got block and spell damage up here. This one gives life and all res, and that all res is also giving spell block from here, which is kind of cool. And then everything else is just kind of like standard mana stacking, mind over matter stuff. Obviously, we take some intelligence as well because intelligence gives mana. And on the wand mastery, we have intelligence added as accuracy to the wand. So that's kind of how we're getting accuracy capped here. You can see my chance to hit 100%. So yeah, that's kind of where most of our accuracy comes from. And then obviously these nodes also give some accuracy here, and some attack speed and stuff, crit, all that stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of the build. That's what we're working with. It's been honestly one of the most fun builds I've ever played. So can definitely recommend this skill. I think people are really sleeping on how good Power Siphon of the Archmage is. I think there's a ton of cool things you can do with this, especially because it essentially is an attack that's scaled exactly like an Archmage spell now that it has built-in spell damage scaling. The only thing that wouldn't apply is like a more spell damage multiplier because it's only the increases and reductions to spell damage that applies, not like more or less spell damage, unfortunately. But otherwise, you can basically scale it exactly like any other Archmage build, which kind of like opens up some pretty cool options, in terms of like you could do, I don't know, some like cast on crit where Power Siphon the Archmage, you're using it to trigger an Archmage spell, and you're scaling both of them off of your max mana, something like that. I don't know. There's some cool stuff you can do for sure with this skill, and I think it's just really interesting skill that's really strong. It also has built-in culling strike and power charge generation on hit, against a rare or unique enemy. So it's just like really good. Obviously, the power charge generation does not work with totems because totems can't generate charges for you. But yeah, the skill is great. Highly recommend it. You don't need any additional projectile scaling, so you don't need to be a Deadeye or anything like that. You just throw on a Fury Valve and the clear is insane, as you saw. So yeah, I really like this skill. It's like probably my new favorite skill. And yeah, build's been really fun. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Also, shout out to the Noteworthy Interactions Discord. Join if you want to like come discuss cool build ideas and stuff like that. I'll leave a link in the about section. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.